He was a Wall Street titan who saw his wife as nothing more than a pretty simple accessory. He flaunted his affairs in her face, mocked her quiet nature, and dismissed her as a financial burden, all while his own empire was built on a house of cards. He threatened to leave her with nothing. What he didn't know was that his simple wife was a silent observer, the hidden heir to a fortune that dwarfed his own. And she had just made a phone call. This is the story of how one man's arrogance led to his total destruction, orchestrated by the woman he never even bothered to know. The air at the Metropolitan Museum of Art's annual gala was thick with the scent of money and tuberose. It wasn't just a party, it was a battlefield. Damian Blackwood, founder of the notoriously aggressive Ares Capital Partners, navigated the room like a shark, a predatory smile fixed on his handsome face. On his arm, his wife, Mina Blackwood, was a vision in simple, elegant navy blue. Her dress, a bespoke piece by a quiet Parisian atelier, was worth more than a luxury car. But it whispered where other dresses shouted. To Damian, this whisper was a weakness. "Mina, darling, do try to look engaged." He murmured, his thumb digging into her arm just a fraction too hard. "Steven Schwartzman is watching. We're in the middle of the Sterling Aerospace play. I need you to look like a victor, not a librarian." Mina offered him a tight, practiced smile. "Of course, Damian. I was just admiring the new exhibit." "Admire it later." "Ah, Serafina." Damian's entire demeanor shifted. He released Mina's arm, turning his full 1,000-watt charm on Serafina Rothschild, an heiress with a razor-sharp reputation and a dress that left little to the imagination. "Damian, darling." Serafina purred, air-kissing him, while pointedly ignoring Mina. "I heard you're making waves, stirring up Sterling. How deliciously hostile." "You know me, Serafina. I don't just knock on the door, I take the hinges," Damian boasted. His hand found the small of Serafina's back, a gesture of casual intimacy that made Mina's stomach clench. Mina watched them, a silent ghost at her own husband's side. This was her life. She had met Damian 3 years ago, while she was working as an assistant curator at a small Soho gallery. She'd been using her mother's maiden name, Vance, but without the multi-billion-dollar conglomerate attached to it. She was just Mina Vance, the quiet, intelligent woman with a sad smile. He'd found her refreshingly pure, a respite from the gold diggers who usually clawed at him. He had married her for her simplicity. Now he resented her for it. He had no idea that her simplicity was a meticulously crafted fortress. She'd fled her world, exhausted by the sycophants, the bodyguards, and the crushing weight of the Vance Consolidated Holdings name. She wanted just once to be loved for who she was, not what she was worth. She had chosen poorly. As Damian and Serafina laughed, their heads bent close together, Mina saw Martin Damian's CFO approaching. Martin looked pale, his eyes darting nervously. "Damian." Martin interrupted, his voice low and urgent. "We have a problem. A big one." Damian's smile faltered, replaced by a flash of irritation. "Not now, Martin. Can't you see I'm networking?" "It's J.P. Morgan," Martin whispered. They're reviewing our credit line, effective immediately, and that $2 billion commitment from the Carlyle Group for the Sterling deal. It's on hold. Indefinitely." Damian's face went rigid. "What? On whose authority?" "I don't know," Martin stammered. "The call came from the very top. They said, Unforeseen market volatility. It makes no sense. The market is fine. Mina watched her husband. She saw the bead of sweat on his temple, the way his knuckles whitened as he gripped his champagne flute. He was leveraged to the absolute limit. Ares Capital was a predator, but a predator that needed to eat constantly. If the sterling deal fell through, if his credit lines were pulled, the entire house of cards would collapse. He turned to Mina, his eyes cold. "This is your fault," he hissed. Mina blinked, genuinely confused. "What, how?" "That charity luncheon you hosted, the one for the animal shelter," he sneered. "It's small time. It makes me look soft. People are talking. They see weakness." Mina's breath hitched. The luncheon had raised over $1 million. "Damien, that's insane. It was a distraction," he snapped. He plastered the smile back on as Serafina glanced over. Go mingle. Talk to, I don't know, someone's wife. Look useful." He turned his back on her, resuming his conversation with Serafina as if nothing had happened, his voice dripping with forced confidence. Mina stood alone for a moment in the center of the swirling crowd. He had humiliated her. He had blamed her. He had flaunted his mistress in her face. For 3 years she had endured the dismissal, the casual cruelty, the profound loneliness, all in the name of the simple life she had craved. She had upheld her end of the bargain. She had been a quiet, supportive, simple wife. He had broken every vow he ever made. She calmly set her untouched champagne flute on a passing waiter's tray. She walked past the Rembrandts, past the throngs of glittering guests, and found a quiet alcove by a Greek statue. She pulled out her phone, a simple, nondescript model. She dialed a number stored under Home. It rang once. "Hello." The voice on the other end was deep, calm, and held the unmistakable weight of old-world power. "Dad," Mina said, her voice trembling just once before it hardened into steel. "It's me." "Mina, are you all right? It's late." "I'm fine," she said, looking back across the hall at her husband, who was now laughing, his hand on Serafina's bare shoulder. "But I'm done." He crossed the last line. "I want to come home." There was a pause. The line was silent, but it felt charged with energy. "Very well," Arthur Vance said. "The jet will be at Teterboro at 0800. I'll clear your schedule." "Dad, one more thing," Mina said. "Ares Capital. Damien. He's been cruel." The silence on the other end was longer this time, heavier. "Cruel," Arthur Vance repeated. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. "I see. Don't worry about Mr. Blackwood, Mina. You just come home. I will handle the housekeeping." Mina hung up. She took a deep breath, straightened the straps of her simple dress, and walked back into the party, a queen returning to her throne. The following morning, Damien Blackwood woke with a blinding headache and a sense of impending doom. The gala had been a disaster. After Martin's news, his bravado had soured into aggression. He'd had too much whiskey and had ended up in a public argument with a rival from KKR, making him look desperate. He stumbled into the vast, minimalist kitchen of their Upper East Side penthouse. The apartment, all glass and cold white marble, had been his choice. Mina had once mentioned wanting a small, cozy brownstone in the West Village. He'd laughed at her. Mina was already there, sipping tea and reading the Financial Times. She wore simple linen trousers and a white shirt. She looked as serene as a mountain lake. It infuriated him. "You look pleased with yourself," he growled, ripping open the refrigerator. "I'm just reading the paper, Damien," she replied, not looking up. "Reading the paper," he mocked, "while my world is on fire. Did you know, JP? Morgan formally suspended our credit line at 6 a.m. 6 a.m. And Goldman Sachs is reviewing their position. It's a coordinated attack." He slammed the refrigerator door, his face mottled with rage. "This sterling deal. It was everything. It was the move that would have put Ares on the map permanently. Now it's dead. Dead all because somebody decided to pull the plug." "Perhaps the deal was too leveraged, Damien," Mina said quietly, turning a page. "I looked at the prospectus. Your debt-to-equity ratio was ambitious." Damien stared at her as if she'd just grown a second head. You looked at the prospectus. What did you color it in?" "Don't talk to me about debt-to-equity. What would you possibly know about it? Your only financial concern is how much you can spend at Bergdorf's." "I rarely shop at Bergdorf's, Damien," she said, her voice still infuriatingly calm. "That's the problem," he roared, slamming his fist on the marble island. "You don't get it. The point of having money is to show it. The point of having a beautiful wife is for her to look like a billionaire's wife. You walk around in those rags." He gestured at her expensive minimalist clothing. "Looking like a philosophy student. You make me look weak. You seem to be doing a fine job of that on your own," she said, finally lowering the paper. Her eyes met his. They were clear and cold. He was taken aback by her sudden spine. "What did you say to me?" "I said," Mina stood up, "that perhaps your business partners are no longer confident in your leadership. Perhaps they see a man who is reckless, over-leveraged, and more concerned with socialites than with his own balance sheets." He stalked toward her, backing her against the counter. "You think you're clever. You with your little art degree and your charity lunches. You are nothing without me. I took you from a $50 $1,000-a-year gallery job. I gave you this." He spread his arms wide, encompassing the sterile, empty penthouse. "I gave you the Blackwood name, and I can take it all away." "Is that a threat, Damien?" "It's a promise," he sneered. "Our prenup is ironclad. My lawyers made sure of it. You annoy me, Mina. You bore me, I divorce you. And you walk away with exactly what you came in with, nothing. Not a cent. You'll be back in some dusty gallery begging for commissions. Remember that." Mina looked at him, her face unreadable. "I will," she said. "I will remember that." "Good. Now get out. I have calls to make. I have to try and save my company from the mess you probably started." Mina didn't argue. She simply picked up her tea, walked to the sink, and poured the remaining perfectly steeped oolong down the drain. She then walked to their bedroom, the guest bedroom she had long since claimed as her own, and calmly locked the door. Damien, left alone in the kitchen, grabbed his phone. He had to call his bankers. He had to scream, to threaten, to beg. His first call was to his contact at the Carlyle Group. It went straight to voicemail. His second was to his primary banker at J.P. Morgan. The man's assistant picked up. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood, but Mr. Harrison is in an all-day planning session. He is completely unavailable." "Unavailable," Damien yelled into the phone. "I have a $1 billion credit line with you people. You tell him to call me now. He left specific instructions not to be disturbed, sir, especially by you." The line clicked dead. Damien's blood ran cold. "Especially by you." This wasn't a review. This was an execution. He poured a large glass of whiskey, his hands shaking. It wasn't even 10 a.m. He looked around the penthouse. The white marble suddenly felt like a tomb. He had built his empire on audacity and debt. He had always known that if one card was pulled, the whole thing would fall. He was so busy projecting strength that he never realized his greatest weakness was standing right beside him, silently watching him implode. Inside her room, Mina was not packing. She was on a secure video call. "The assets are being marshaled, Ms. Vance," said a stern-looking man on the screen. His background, a nondescript but clearly expensive office in Geneva. "We have begun the process of acquiring Ares Capital's outstanding debt from JP Morgan and Goldman. They were surprisingly eager to sell. It seems Mr. Blackwood's reputation precedes him." "Good Mr. Dubois," Mina said. She was now wearing a sharp, tailored blazer. "And the Sterling Aerospace play. Your father handled that personally." Dubois smiled faintly. "Vance Consolidated's European division acquired a 51% controlling interest in Sterling an hour ago. We paid in cash. The deal Mr. Blackwood was trying to build on leverage we just bought. The press release will go out at noon." Mina nodded. "He'll be desperate. He'll be looking for a lifeline. Make sure he finds none. I want every bridge burned, every well poisoned. By the time my father arrives tomorrow, I want Ares Capital to be nothing but a shell waiting for a new owner." "Understood, Miss Vance," Dubois said. "A pleasure to have you back in the game." "It's good to be back," Mina said, and closed the laptop. The news of the Sterling Aerospace acquisition hit the wires at 12:01 p.m. Vance Consolidated Holdings acquires Sterling Aerospace in shock all-cash deal. Rival bid from Ares Capital collapses. Damien saw the headline on the Bloomberg terminal in his home office. The whiskey glass shattered in his hand. Vance Consolidated," he whispered, blood dripping from his palm. "Who the hell is Vance Consolidated?" He'd heard the name, of course. Everyone had. But they were old money, silent money. They didn't do hostile takeovers. They owned shipping lanes, cobalt mines, pharmaceutical giants, and technology patents. They were the quiet foundation upon which half the global economy was built. They weren't players like him. They were the house. And the house had just taken his prize. His phone began to ring. It didn't stop for the next 3 hours. It was a symphony of destruction. "Damien, it's Martin." His CFO's voice was a high-pitched squeal. "The board is calling for an emergency meeting. Forbes just downgraded your personal net worth. They're saying we're insolvent." "We are not insolvent," Damien roared, wrapping a napkin around his bleeding hand. "We are if we can't meet payroll, Damien. Our operating accounts at Citibank have been frozen." Frozen. They cited a material adverse change clause. The material change was the Sterling deal failing. Click. Another call. "Mr. Blackwood. This is legal counsel for the New York State Attorney General. We are opening an inquiry into Ares Capital's fiduciary reporting. We have received an anonymous, but extremely detailed tip." Click. Another call. "Damien, it's Serafina." Her voice was no longer a purr. It was brittle. I think it's best we don't see each other for a while. My father, he said you're a pariah. I'm so sorry, darling." The line went dead. He threw the phone against the wall where it splintered. Cowards, all of them. He was trapped. He was hemorrhaging money and prestige with every passing second. The Sterling deal wasn't just a loss. It was a humiliation. Vance Consolidated had bought it out from under him like he was a child bidding for a toy. He needed a lifeline. He needed someone to blame. He stormed through the penthouse, shouting Mina's name. He kicked open the door to her bedroom. It was empty. Her closet was open. Her simple, expensive clothes were gone. Her jewelry box, which he'd always found pathetically sparse, was empty. The only thing left on her bedside table was her wedding ring, a simple platinum band left right next to a copy of their ironclad prenup. She left me, Damien said, stunned. The audacity. She left him. Now. When he was on the ropes, a new, colder rage filled him. She must have heard the rumors, he muttered. The little gold digger. She saw the ship was sinking and she was the first rat off. He laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Good. Fine, she gets nothing. Just like the prenup says. She walks away with nothing. He paced his office, his mind racing. He was ruined. The AG was sniffing around. His investors were gone. His credit was shot. His wife was gone. No, he wasn't ruined. He was Damien Blackwood. He would file for Chapter 11. He would restructure. His private line rang the one reserved for his biggest investors. He snatched it up. Hello. Is this Mr. Blackwood? A polite, British-accented voice asked. Who is this? Damien snapped. My name is Julian Hayes. I represent the office of Mr. Arthur Vance. We'd like to schedule a meeting with you for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at your offices. Damien froze. Vance. The name from the headline. Arthur Vance. Damien said, his voice suddenly hoarse. The CEO of Vance Consolidated. That is correct, sir. Mr. Vance finds himself in New York and has a vested interest in the transition of the Sterling Aerospace assets. He felt it would be courteous to meet with the former bidder. A lifeline. Damien's mind spun 1,000 calculations running at once. They bought Sterling. They crushed him. Why meet to gloat or to invest? Maybe they saw his audacity. Maybe they saw a fellow shark. Maybe they wanted to buy out Ares Capital to bring him into their fold. He was toxic waste to everyone else, but to a giant like Vance, he could be a bargain. Yes, Damien said, straightening his spine, his bravado returning. Yes, 9 a.m. is perfect. I'll have my team prepare a presentation. Oh, that won't be necessary, Mr. Blackwood, the assistant said, his voice chillingly polite. This won't be a presentation. It's a debriefing. Mr. Vance will bring his own legal team. Good day. The line clicked dead. Damien stood in the silent office, the bloody napkin still clutched in his hand. A debriefing. Legal team. A cold, dark suspicion began to creep into his mind. He looked at the empty, sterile penthouse. He thought of his wife, Mina. Her maiden name. What was her maiden name? He'd never even paid attention. He'd just had his lawyers run a background check and they'd said she was clean. No family, no money, no connections. He scrambled to his desk, pulling open the drawer where he kept his copy of the marriage certificate. He found it under a stack of old invitations. Groom Damien, Michael Blackwood. Bride Mina. Mina Vance. His heart stopped. No, he whispered, staring at the name. No. It's a coincidence. It has to be. Vance was a common name, wasn't it? Like Smith. Or Jones. But he knew with a dreadful sinking certainty that it was not. He remembered her quiet confidence, her knowledge of his prospectus, her infuriating calm. He had called her a simple librarian. He had married the shark that was about to eat him alive. The offices of Ares Capital Partners, occupying the 48th and 49th floors of the Seagram building, were usually a hive of manic high testosterone energy. On this morning, it was a tomb. Employees huddled in small, whispering groups, computers, dark, the news tickers on the wall flatlining. Damien Blackwood hadn't slept. He was wearing the same suit as the day before. Now rumpled his face a mask of sleepless, paranoid fury. He had spent the night alternating between two frantic activities, trying to move his personal funds to offshore accounts, all of which were mysteriously frozen, and frantically Googling Arthur Vance. The results had only deepened his terror. Arthur Vance wasn't just a billionaire. He was a kingmaker, a shadow that moved governments. He didn't appear on Forbes lists because he owned the media companies that made the lists. He was photographed once a year at Davos, usually in conversation with presidents and Federal Reserve chairs. He was old money, quiet money, permanent money. And Damien had spent 3 years telling his daughter that her charity lunches were tacky. At 8:55 a.m., Damien was pacing his corner office, a vast expanse of glass overlooking Park Avenue. His CFO, Martin, was sitting on the $100,000 Italian leather sofa, nervously shredding a paper napkin. "He's here to buy us, Martin. He has to be," Damien said, his voice raw. "He's going to buy the company for pennies on the dollar. He'll want me to run it. He'll see my talent, my aggression." "Damien, the AG is downstairs," Martin said weakly. They're not asking to come up. They're just waiting, with boxes." "He'll handle that," Damien insisted, gesturing wildly. "A man like Vance. He makes one call, the AG disappears. This is a test. He's testing my nerve." At 8:59 a.m., the private elevator to the 49th floor chimed. Damien's assistant, pale as a sheet, buzzed him. "Sir, he's here." The doors to Damien's office slid open. It wasn't one man. It was 5. 4 of them were clearly lawyers. 2 from a top New York firm. Damien recognized the lead counsel from Wachtell Lipton, and 2 from what appeared to be an in-house team. They were all carrying thick, leather-bound portfolios. In the center was Arthur Vance. He was perhaps 60 tall, with a full head of silver hair. He wore a simple dark grey suit, but it was a bespoke Keaton K50. A suit that cost more than Damien's car and took over 50 hours to hand-make. His shoes were gleaming John Lobs. He wore no flashy watch, just a simple Patek Philippe Calatrava. He radiated an aura of absolute unshakable power that made Damien's manufactured charisma look like a cheap party trick. "Mr. Blackwood," Arthur Vance said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the cavernous office. "Thank you for seeing us." Damien, trying to regain his footing, strode forward, his hand outstretched. "Mr. Vance, an honor, a true honor. Please sit." Arthur Vance ignored the hand. He walked past Damien and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows looking down at Park Avenue. "Ares Capital Partners," Arthur said, his back still to Damien. "Ares, the god of war. How fitting. You've made quite a name for yourself, Mr. Blackwood. All smoke, all leverage, all noise. I call it aggressive growth, sir." Damien said, his smile feeling brittle. "You call it what you like," Arthur said, turning. His eyes were the same clear, assessing grey as Mina's. They held no anger. They held something far worse, complete indifference. "I'm not here to negotiate a purchase, Mr. Blackwood," Arthur said. "You seem to be under the impression that you have something left to sell." Damien's blood ran cold. I don't understand. My company." "Your company," one of the lawyers interjected, stepping forward, "is currently in default on its primary credit lines to JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Citibank." "That's a temporary liquidity," Damien started. "It's permanent," the lawyer said, "because as of 7:00 a.m. this morning, Vance Consolidated Holdings acquired 100% of your outstanding debt from those institutions. We bought your mortgage, Mr. Blackwood, all $14.7 billion of it." Damien stumbled back, grabbing his desk for support. Martin let out a small, strangled squeak. You bought my debt. You were trying to buy Sterling Aerospace for a 30% premium using leverage you didn't have," Arthur said calmly. "I bought it for a 10% discount using cash. Then I used my pocket money, as my daughter would call it, to buy your entire over-leveraged, toxic asset-filled company. You see, the banks were thrilled to get it off their books. They know what the Attorney General is about to find in your servers." You tipped them off," Damien accused, his voice cracking. "We didn't have to," the second lawyer said. "We simply provided the documentation from our own internal audit, which we conducted as your new primary creditor. The evidence of wire fraud, insider trading, and market manipulation was extensive. You're a very sloppy bookkeeper, Mr. Blackwood." This is illegal," Damien shouted. "You can't just—" "We can," Arthur said, his voice dropping. "And we have. Ares Capital Partners is now a fully owned, distressed asset subsidiary of Vance Consolidated. Your board has been dissolved. Your executive team," he glanced at Martin, "is terminated. Effective now." Martin fainted. He slumped off the sofa and onto the floor in a heap. Neither Damien nor Arthur paid him any attention. Damien was hyperventilating. Why do this just for Sterling? It's business, I get it, but this is a destruction." Arthur Vance walked slowly toward Damien, stopping just a foot away. For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed his face. It was cold, pure contempt. "You are loud, Mr. Blackwood. You are arrogant. You are crude. I find your entire new money operation distasteful, but I have divisions that employ men far worse than you. I would not have crossed the street to spit on you if you were on fire." He leaned in his voice, dropping to a whisper that cut through Damien's panic like a surgeon's blade. "But you made one catastrophic mistake." "What?" Damien whispered, an awful dawning realization hitting him. "You disrespected my daughter." Damien stared, his mind finally painfully connecting the last dot. Mina Vance. Mina Vance, Arthur confirmed, his eyes like chips of ice. "My only child. My heir. The woman who will one day control this entire organization. She came to New York to escape the name. She wanted to find one single authentic person. She wanted a simple life." Arthur shook his head, a look of profound disappointment on his face. "And she found you. A cheap, hollow con man in a flashy suit." I loved her." Damien stammered, the lie tasting like ash. I didn't know. That," Arthur Vance said, "is the single most damning sentence you could have uttered. You didn't know. You lived with her for 3 years and you never knew. You never asked. You never saw her. You saw a simple, pretty accessory you could ignore. You humiliated her. You threatened her. You flaunted your degenerate affairs. My daughter. Arthur continued, his voice rising just a fraction, is a magna cum laude graduate from Wharton with a master's in economics from LSE. She ran my entire Geneva commodities division for 5 years under an assumed name, and she increased its profits by 400%. She speaks 4 languages. She can analyze a balance sheet faster than your entire team of Ivy League sycophants. He pointed a finger at Damien's chest. And you told her to go look useful and talk to the wives. You threatened to leave her with nothing. Arthur smiled, a terrifying, razor-thin expression. The irony is exquisite. Damien's world had shrunk to the space between his own desk and Arthur Vance's impeccably tailored suit. The sounds of the office, the distant crying, the chime of the elevator. Martin's low moans from the floor, all faded away. The prenup, Damien whispered, clinging to the last piece of wreckage. The prenup. It's ironclad. Wachtell Lipton drafted it themselves, he said, gesturing to one of the lawyers, who merely looked at him with pity. She gets nothing. What she came in with. She came in with nothing. Arthur Vance actually laughed. It was a short, dry, brutal sound. Mr. Blackwood, you are truly a fool. Please. He gestured to his own lead counsel. Mr. Hayes, would you kindly explain the terms you drafted for Mr. Blackwood 3 years ago? The lawyer, the same one with the British accent from the phone, stepped forward. Indeed. Mr. Blackwood, you came to our firm Wachtell Lipton with a request. You were, in your words, a self-made billionaire marrying a gallery assistant with no assets. You wanted, and I quote, an ironclad agreement that this girl can't touch a single share of Ares Capital. Exactly, Damien said, a wild hope in his eyes. She can't touch Ares. We drafted precisely that. Mr. Hayes continued, his voice smooth and surgical. The agreement which both you and Ms. Vance signed stipulates that in the event of a marital dissolution, each party retains 100% of the assets they brought into the marriage, and 100% of the assets acquired from their respective family trusts or inheritances during the marriage. All commingled property, such as this penthouse, which you bought with a joint mortgage, is to be split 50-50. So I keep Ares, and she gets half the penthouse. That's it. She's... Mr. Blackwood, you are not listening. Mr. Hayes said, his patience wearing thin. You brought Ares Capital, a highly leveraged, debt-ridden, and as we now know, fraudulent enterprise into the marriage. It's worth billions. It was, Arthur Vance cut in. Now it's a liability, a shell, a criminal case, and per your own agreement, you get to keep it. 100% of it. All the debt, all the lawsuits, all the consequences. Damien's face went white. Mr. Hayes continued. Miss Mina Vance, on the other hand, brought her assets into the marriage. She had nothing. She had her name, Mr. Blackwood. She was and is the sole beneficiary of the Vance Family Trust established in 1923. At the time of your marriage, her personal liquid net worth, entirely separate from the main corporate holdings, was approximately $9.4 billion. Damien's legs gave out. He fell into his chair, his jaw hanging open. But the gallery. She was bored, Arthur said. She wanted to be near the art she loved. The gallery owner is her godfather. He paid her a salary so she could feel normal. her simple navy blue dress last night. It was a one-of-a-kind archival piece, her pathetically sparse jewelry. That ring she wore, a flawless 10-carat blue diamond. You thought she was simple because she was quiet. You mistook taste for poverty. You are at your core a hopelessly vulgar man. So she's rich. Yes, Damien. The woman you ignored is one of the wealthiest individuals on the planet, Arthur said. And per your prenup, you don't get to touch a single fabulous cent of it. You only get to keep what is yours. And what is yours as of 9:05 a.m. this morning is nothing. The finality of it hit Damien like a physical blow. He wasn't just losing his company. He wasn't just being divorced. He was being left with the smouldering crater of his own life while the woman he'd mocked was walking away with everything, because he had insisted on it. But this penthouse, he stammered, looking around. Half. You said half. I can sell. I can... Ah, yes, the penthouse, Mr. Hayes said, pulling a final document from his portfolio. About that. As your primary creditor, Vance Consolidated, has placed a lien on all your known assets as collateral against your corporate debt. This apartment, your jet, your cars, your art collection, they are all as of this moment seized. You will of course be given your 50% of the equity after the assets are liquidated and used to pay your creditors, namely us. The lawyer smiled. Given the extent of your fraud, I suspect your equity will amount to, let's see, approximately 0. Arthur Vance checked his simple Patek Philippe watch. Our work here is done. Gentlemen, please secure the premises. The AG's office will be handling the criminal component. The two in-house lawyers moved one to Damien's desk to secure his computer, the other to the still unconscious Martin. Wait, Damien shrieked, lurching forward. Please, Mr. Vance, Arthur. Please, I can apologize. I'll do anything. I'll beg. I love her. I didn't mean it. He fell to his knees, grabbing at the hem of Arthur's suit. Arthur looked down at him, his face a mask of utter disgust. He carefully plucked the fabric from Damien's grasp. You are correct about one thing, Mr. Blackwood. You will beg, but not to me, and not to my daughter. He nodded to the door. Two very large, very serious-looking men in black suits, men who were clearly not lawyers, stepped into the room. Mr. Blackwood is passing, Arthur said calmly. Please escort him from my building. He is to leave with only the items he has on his person. No, Damien screamed, scrambling backward. You can't do this. This is my office. This is my life. Mina, you can't do this to me. The security men grabbed him one by each arm and lifted him from the floor as if he weighed nothing. You'll hear from my lawyers, Damien shrieked as they dragged him across the plush carpet. They'll be speaking to our lawyers, Arthur Vance replied, already turning his back. And I suspect to the U.S. Attorney's office. As Damien was dragged past his assistant's desk through the stunned, silent bullpen, the glass doors of the elevator opened. Standing inside, flanked by her own security team, was Mina. She was not the simple, quiet wife from the gala. She was dressed in a razor-sharp, white Chanel power suit. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. Her eyes as cold and grey as her father's met Damien's. She looked magnificent and terrifying. Mina! He cried, his voice breaking. Baby, please, stop this. It's a mistake. I love you. Tell them I love you. Mina looked at him. The man who was being held up by two men. His face streaked with tears, his rumpled suit a mockery of his former power. She said nothing. She just held his gaze, her expression perfectly devastatingly blank. Then she stepped out of the elevator and walked past him without a single glance towards her new corner office as the doors slid shut, sealing Damien Blackwood in the descending darkness. Mina Blackwood, or as the world would now know her. Mina Vance walked onto the 49th floor trading floor. The remaining employees, the ones not immediately implicated in Damien's fraud, stood frozen, watching her. She walked directly to the head of the vast, silent room, her father following a few paces behind. She stood on the small dais that Damien used to use for his aggressive Wolf of Wall Street-style motivational speeches. "Good morning," Mina said. Her voice, no longer the soft murmur she'd used at home, was crisp, clear, and carried across the room. It was the voice of a CEO. "My name is Mina Vance. As of 9:00 a.m. this morning, I am the acting CEO of this entity. Ares Capital Partners is being dissolved. Its name, its reputation, and its toxic practices are being buried." She paused, letting the finality of that sink in. "Vance Consolidated is not in the business of hostile leverage or fraudulent accounting. We are in the business of building value. We have acquired this firm's assets and its debts for one reason: to salvage what is worth saving." She looked out at the sea of terrified faces. "Most of you are analysts, traders, and support staff. You are also victims of Mr. Blackwood's ego. You have two choices. You can pack your desks and leave with the severance package our legal team is currently drafting. It will be adequate." She leaned forward slightly. "Or you can stay. You can work for me. We will be forming a new division, Vance Strategic Opportunities. It will be based on real analytics, real value, and zero tolerance for the kind of behavior that brought this house down. You will work harder than you ever have before, and you will be held to a standard you have never been held to before. But you will be building something that lasts." She scanned their faces. "The U.S. Attorney's Office will be conducting a full investigation. Anyone found to have been complicit in Mr. Blackwood's activities will be handed over to them directly. We do not shield criminals. However," she continued, "anyone who comes forward today with evidence of wrongdoing, evidence that aids our internal audit, and the government's investigation will be given full immunity by Vance Consolidated and our full-throated recommendation for leniency to the AG. We value honesty, even if it's late." Within seconds, a junior partner at the back of the room raised his hand, his face pale. "Ms. Vance, I have something. A hard drive. Damien. He had a secret ledger." Mina nodded to one of her lawyers. "Mr. Hayes, please take Mr. Miller. John Miller. Take Mr. Miller's statement. He is the first to do the right thing. He will be remembered for it." A visible wave of relief and calculation passed through the room. Suddenly, 3 more hands went up. The dam of loyalty had broken. Mina had just dismantled Damien's cult of personality and replaced it with a new, terrifying and deeply appealing order competence. Arthur Vance watched from the sidelines, a rare, faint smile of pride on his face. He had come to destroy a company. His daughter had just salvaged it. Meanwhile, Damien was unceremoniously thrown out of the building's front lobby onto the sidewalk of Park Avenue. The security guards tossed his briefcase, which he'd left by the door, onto the pavement after him. It burst open, scattering useless papers into the wind. He was on all fours, gasping when the first flashbulb went off. "Mr. Blackwood, is it true Ares is insolvent? Damien. What's your comment on the Vance acquisition? Is it true your wife is Arthur Vance's daughter, A horde of reporters, clearly tipped off, descended on him. He was trapped. He tried to stand to regain some dignity, but he was a wreck. His suit was torn, his hand was caked in dried blood, and his face was a mask of sheer, unadulterated panic. No comment. Get away from me, he stammered, trying to push through them. He stumbled down the street, a pathetic, hunted figure. He reached into his pocket for his phone to call a car, only to realize it was still shattered in his penthouse office. He fumbled for his wallet. He had his Amex black card. He tried to hail a cab. Take me to the Carlisle, he told the driver. He got in, and the driver looked at the card reader. Sorry, pal. Cards declined. Damien stared. Declined. That's impossible. Run it again. I did, buddy. It's declined. Says account frozen. You got cash? Damien's wallet had $23 in it. He looked at the driver, his mind collapsing. The sheer total comprehensive nature of his ruin was staggering. They hadn't just taken his company. They had taken everything. His credit, his cars, his home. Get out of the cab, pal, the driver said, his voice unkind. Damien Blackwood, the billionaire shark of Wall Street, was kicked out of a taxi on the corner of 53rd and Park for being unable to pay the fare. He stood on the sidewalk, $23 to his name, as the city that once worshipped him rushed past, utterly indifferent to his fall. 6 weeks later, the Wall Street Journal ran a front page above the fold story, "The Vance Heir, How Minor Vance is Forging a New Empire from the Ashes of Ares Capital." The article was a masterpiece of corporate rebranding. It detailed Mina's brilliant anonymous career in Geneva, her quiet observation of the New York market, and her swift surgical takeover of her husband's fraudulent firm. She was the silent shark, the Wharton wonder, the heiress who played humble. Inside the new rebranded offices, now redesigned in warm woods, soft lighting and living green walls, Mina Vance ran her first quarterly review for Vance Strategic Opportunities. The room was packed. John Miller, the analyst who had come forward with the hard drive, was now her head of risk management. Our Q1 projections are stable, Mina said, her voice confident as she addressed the room. We have successfully unwound 90% of the toxic assets left by Mr. Blackwood. Our new clean energy fund, backed by Vance Consolidated's main holdings, is already oversubscribed. We are building. We are done gambling. The team applauded. It was not the manic, fearful applause Damien had demanded. It was the sound of genuine respect. After the meeting, Mina walked back to her corner office. It was the same office, but she had replaced Damien's cold, blackened chrome furniture with comfortable sofas, bookshelves, and a large abstract painting by Helen Frankenthaler, one she had borrowed from her father's collection. Her father was waiting for her, looking out the same window he had looked out of when he'd destroyed Damien. You're enjoying this, Arthur said. It wasn't a question. I'm enjoying the work, Mina corrected, pouring them both coffee. Damien was right about one thing. I was bored. I missed the game. You were always better at it than I was, Arthur said, taking the cup. I'm a builder. You? You're a strategist. You see the whole board. I learned by watching him, Mina said, her gaze distant. He was sloppy, arrogant. He thought because I was his wife, I was also his subordinate. He never realized I was his auditor. What of him? Arthur asked, his voice careful. Mina's face hardened just for a moment. Damien. His trial starts next month. The SEC, the SDNY. They're lining up. The secret ledger Mr. Miller provided was comprehensive. He's facing at minimum 20 years. He'll be lucky if he ever sees a golf course again. She added, his mistress, Serafina Rothschild, is a cooperating witness for the prosecution in exchange for immunity. It seems Damien used her father's private funds for one of his shell games. She was displeased. Arthur nodded, satisfied. Good. Justice. It's not justice, Dad, Mina said quietly. It's just business. She looked out at the city. She had spent 3 years in a gilded cage of her own making, trying to be someone she wasn't. Now she was exactly who she was always meant to be. She had lost a husband she'd never really had, but she had regained herself. The final scene of Damien Blackwood's public life was not in a courtroom. It was 2 days later at a pre-trial hearing. He had been forced to sell his $50,000 Patek Philippe watch, the one real asset he had on him, to pay for a lawyer. The lawyer was mediocre. Damien sat hollow-eyed and thin in a cheap off-the-rack suit. He looked like a ghost. As he was being led out, a New York Post reporter ambushed him. Damien, one question. After all this, after losing everything, what do you have to say to your wife? Damien stopped. He looked into the camera. The old arrogant fire was gone. All that was left was a hollow, desperate shell. He knew she would see this. He knew she would be watching. Mina, he whispered, his voice cracking. I'm sorry. I didn't know. The camera zoomed in on his face, a pathetic epitaph. He didn't know. Back in her office, Mina watched the clip on her computer. Her father stood behind her. Do you believe him? Arthur asked. Mina watched the broken man on the screen. The man who had mocked her, threatened her, and ignored her. She clicked the mouse, closing the video window. It doesn't matter, Mina Vance said, turning back to her work. He's irrelevant. A year passed. The name Damien Blackwood was now a cautionary tale, whispered on Wall Street, a byword for a catastrophic, hubristic fall. He had been found guilty on 14 counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and racketeering. The secret ledger had been his undoing. He was serving a 25-year sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Otisville. He had no visitors. His friends had vanished. His family, embarrassed, had disowned him. He had truly, as his own prenup dictated, been left with nothing. The Vance Strategic Opportunities Fund, under Mina's leadership, had become one of the most respected new firms in New York. Mina hadn't just cleaned house. She had built a new one on a foundation of steel. She was ruthless, brilliant, and fair. She was also, for the first time in her adult life, truly content. She had finalized her divorce 6 months prior. The proceedings had taken less than 15 minutes. Per the prenup, she had retained her multi-billion-dollar trust, and he had retained his multi-billion-dollar corporate debt, which was now the property of the U.S. government. She still lived in New York, but not in the cold marble penthouse. She had bought the small, charming brownstone in the West Village she had always wanted. It was filled with books, art, and warmth. She was dating, though, with extreme caution, a literature professor from Columbia. A man who knew exactly who she was and was far more impressed by her knowledge of 19th century poets than her stock portfolio. One afternoon, Mina was in her office when her assistant buzzed her. Miss Vance, there's a letter for you. It's from Otisville. Mina paused. Send it in." The letter was on thin prison stationery, the handwriting messy, almost childlike. "Mina, I don't know if you'll read this. They say I have to show remorse to get parole in 15 years. I don't know what remorse is. I just know I'm cold, and I'm scared. I think about that first day, at the gallery. You were so quiet. You were wearing a yellow dress. I thought you were real. I thought you were the one good, real thing in my life. But I was the fake one. I see that now. I was so busy trying to be a billionaire that I never stopped to ask what you were. I didn't ignore you because I hated you. I ignored you because I was a coward. I was terrified you would see that I was nothing. Just a kid from nowhere with a lot of debt and a big mouth. And you did see it, didn't you, all along? I don't want your money. I don't want forgiveness. I just want to know. That woman in the yellow dress, was any of that real? Or was it all a game to you too? Damien. Mina read the letter twice. She felt a faint ghost-like ache. Not for the man he had become, but for the man he might have been. For the simple life that had been a lie for both of them. She picked up a pen, took a piece of her own heavy, cream-colored stationery, and wrote 2 words. She sealed the envelope and gave it to her assistant to mail. A week later, Damien received the reply in the prison mailroom. He tore it open, his hands shaking. He unfolded the thick, expensive paper. It just said, "It was." Damien sat down on his cot, staring at the 2 words. It was. It was real. The quiet life, the gentle smiles, the hope it had all been real. And he, in his arrogance, in his blind, stupid quest for more, had personally, methodically destroyed it. He had been given the one authentic thing he cradled, and he had ground it to dust because he was too ignorant to see its value. That he realized was the true prison. The 25-year sentence was just a consequence. Mina, back in her brownstone, poured a glass of wine and watched the snow fall over her small, quiet garden. Her phone buzzed. It was her father. "Just landed, sweetheart," Arthur's voice boomed. "Are you ready for dinner? I've booked our favorite pair, say. I'm ready." "Dad," Mina said, smiling, "I'll be right there." She put on her coat, locked her own door, and walked out into the city. No longer a hidden princess or an ignored wife, but a queen free and in control of her own very real empire. And so Damien Blackwood learned the hardest lesson of all the price of ignorance. He thought his wife was an accessory, but she was the auditor. He thought his prenup was a shield, but it was a self-destruct button. He ignored the one person who truly saw him, and in the end, he was left with nothing but the echo of his own arrogance. Mina didn't just take his company. She reclaimed her own identity, proving that true power isn't about the noise you make, but the silence you keep and the moment you choose to break it. What did you think of Mina's revenge? Was it justice, or was it just business? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you loved this story of karma and consequences, please hit that like button, share it with a friend who loves drama, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications